Let's end this. That's what I said to her, at the end of a battle that had lasted 76 hours straight. And I meant it. I thought that when the Frost Queen died, the nightmare would be over, and the whole world could finally go back to normal. I was so wrong that it took me 25 years to find out how wrong. My name is Seo Jun-ho. But the world knew me by another name. Spectre. The strongest player humanity ever produced. Let me take you back to how all of this began, because to understand my story, you have to understand what happened to the world. One day, without warning, everything changed. Earth became something like a game. Gates, tears and reality ripped open across the sky, and monsters came pouring out of them into our cities. And at the same time, the human race changed too. Ordinary people woke up one morning with levels, with stats, with skills, thrust into a brutal new reality where you either learned to fight or you died. Governments buckled. Society tore itself apart and slowly rebuilt around this insane new set of rules. Money, power, survival itself, all of it now revolved around how strong a player you were. And out of all that chaos and death, 5 players rose above everyone else, the 5 strongest human beings alive on the planet. I was one of them. As Spectre, I commanded darkness itself, a power so feared that there wasn't a monster on Earth I couldn't cut down. My name alone made things flee. I had reached the very top of a world that ran on strength. 5 years after the world first changed, the system finally announced it, the final boss had appeared. The Frost Queen. The message was simple and it gave everyone hope: defeat her, and it would all be over. The gates would close. The nightmare would end. The world could go back to being normal. So the 5 of us, the greatest heroes of the age, gathered everything we had and threw ourselves at her together. And it nearly broke us. The fight against the Frost Queen went on for days without rest. 76 hours, 48 minutes, and 16 seconds, I remember the exact number, because I stared at that battle timer as my body screamed for the fight to end. She was unlike anything we'd faced. Every time we thought we had her, the temperature would drop again, and another wave of impossible cold would tear through us. My friends fell one by one. Each of them, at the edge of death, was swallowed by a strange frozen sleep, not killed, but locked away in ice, unmoving. I watched the 4 strongest people I knew go down around me until I was the only one left standing. Alone. Exhausted past the point any human should be able to fight. My legendary weapons broken, my mana nearly gone, facing a queen who looked at my ruined state and laughed. She told me I understood nothing about this world. She told me I had no idea what I was really doing. I didn't care about any of it. I had one purpose left in my burning out body: end her, so my friends could wake up. So I gathered the last of my darkness, I swung a broken sword with everything I had left, and I killed the final boss of Earth. She died smiling, saying she'd had fun. I told her the truth, I hadn't. And then, in my exhaustion, I made the mistake that would cost me a quarter of a century. A hellhound crawled out of the ground and devoured her corpse, and it spat out a nucleus, a glowing power source. I reached down and picked it up. And the moment I touched it, warnings exploded across my vision. I had started absorbing the Frost Queen's power. Ice spread across my skin. My blood ran cold, my heartbeat slowed, my body locked up. And my consciousness simply froze. I thought I was dying. I thought about my parents. I thought about the promise I'd made my friends, that we'd all see each other again. And then everything went white and silent. When I opened my eyes again, I was standing on a stage. Confused, disoriented, my last memory a battlefield and a glowing nucleus. But there was no battlefield. There were rows of folding chairs. A banner. And children, dozens of them, staring at me with their mouths open, some starting to scream. Because I wasn't dying on a frozen battlefield anymore. I was thawing out, cracking free of a block of ice, in the middle of an elementary school field trip, at a museum, where my own frozen body had been standing on display like a statue for people to gawk at. 25 years had passed. Let me say that again, slowly, because it took me a long time to accept it myself. 25 years. While I stood frozen, entire childhoods happened. Technology changed. The people who fought beside me grew old. And my body, the body of the great hero Spectre, had been mounted in the Seoul History Museum as a national treasure. Every year, on November 11th, the Day of Heroes, crowds would line up around the block to see the 5 frozen statues of the champions who saved the world. Tourists flew in from other countries just to photograph us. Children were taught our names in history class the way they learn about ancient kings. To the entire planet, Spectre was a legend. A martyr. A dead man in a block of ice, to be admired and mourned. And now that supposedly dead man had just cracked out of the ice and stepped off his own pedestal, alive, blinking in the museum lights, in front of a tour group that would remember this day for the rest of their lives. The reunion that followed shattered me. I found my old friend, the one who'd been a rookie beside me back in the day, and he was now an old man, the head of the Hero Association. Everyone I'd known had aged 25 years while I slept. The world had moved on entirely without me. And worst of all, I learned the truth that the Frost Queen had laughed about with her dying breath. Killing her hadn't ended anything. She was never the true final boss. She was only the boss of the very first floor. The moment I fell into that frozen sleep, the system revealed its cruel joke. Earth wasn't one battlefield, it was a tower of 10 floors, and the Frost Queen had been standing guard over just the first one. 9 more waited above her. 9 floors of horrors I'd never seen. And in all 25 years that I stood frozen in that museum, humanity, with its swelling population of new players, its new techniques, its new so-called heroes, had managed to clear exactly one of those 9. In a quarter of a century, they'd advanced almost nowhere. But here is the part that lit a fire in me that nothing in this world could ever put out. My 4 comrades, the friends who fell asleep in that endless battle right beside me, they were still frozen. Still standing on their own museum pedestals. Still sleeping, 25 years later, waiting for a rescue that had never come. And I was the only one of the 5 who had woken up. Which meant I was the only one who could climb the floors ahead. And that meant I was the only person in the entire world who could ever bring them back. From that moment, everything else fell away. The fame didn't matter. The legend didn't matter. The lost time, the world that had forgotten how to need me, none of it mattered. I had exactly one reason to live now: climb every remaining floor of this tower, grow strong enough to break whatever held my friends in that ice, and wake them up. However long it took. Whatever it cost me. I would not leave them sleeping. There was just one enormous problem. When the ice took me, the system had taken something too. My levels. My power. As I got my bearings in this strange new world, I checked my own status and my stomach dropped. Spectre, the strongest man alive, the player who wielded darkness itself, had been reset almost all the way back to the beginning. All that legendary strength, the power I'd bled for over years of fighting, simply gone. What I had left was the knowledge, the instincts, the hard-won experience of the greatest player in history, crammed into the weak body of someone barely above a beginner. For most people, that would have been the end of the story. A crushing anticlimax. The hero returns and discovers he's helpless. But I'd already died once for this world. A reset wasn't going to stop me. So I made a decision that only someone like me would make. I would hide the name Spectre completely. I would bury the legend. The world believed Spectre was a frozen hero standing on a pedestal. Fine, let them keep believing it. It was the perfect cover. Instead, I would start over from the very bottom as an unknown rookie named Seo Jun-ho, an ordinary new player nobody would look at twice, and I would climb back to the summit faster than anyone in the history of this world. Because unlike an actual rookie, I wasn't learning anything. I was remembering. I already knew every secret this game had. And that's where the story becomes so satisfying to watch. Picture the single most experienced fighter alive, forced to walk back through the beginner stages, pretending to be brand new. I knew every monster's weakness before it moved. I knew every gate's hidden trick. I knew combat skills and strategies that this generation of players wouldn't discover for years to come. The modern hunters, with their flashy new techniques and their easy arrogance, had absolutely no idea that the mysterious super rookie tearing up the rankings was the very hero they lined up to worship behind museum glass. I cleared the Gate of Trials, a legendary, brutal challenge that filters out all but the best, and I set a new record. Then came the strange, quiet moment when I realized the old record I was breaking was my own, set decades ago as Spectre, still standing untouched all these years. I was a nobody outperforming a legend, and the legend was also me. I hunted monsters that veteran players wouldn't dare approach. I nearly died bringing down a six-tailed cinder fox to harvest its core, then used that core to save a dying person overseas and walked away with a fortune for it. Everywhere I went, I left impossible results in my wake, and the entire hunter world started buzzing with the same question: who is this rookie, and where on earth did he come from? But this world had grown darker in 25 years, and not only because of the monsters spilling out of gates. There were fiends now, humans and creatures corrupted and twisted by demonic energy, hiding among ordinary people, preying on the weak and the voiceless. I found a nest of them in Rome, running an orphanage with the sickeningly ironic name of Paradise, using it to lure in children who had no one to protect them. When I peeled back the disguise and saw what those caretakers truly were, I showed them absolutely no mercy. And that fight taught me something vital about my own returning power. My darkness, the ability I called the Watchguard of Darkness, could actually devour demonic energy itself. It could eat away at the corruption that these fiends were made of. The very power that had made me Spectre turned out to be the perfect weapon against the rot quietly spreading through this new world. My old strength wasn't just coming back. It was exactly what this darker, sicker world needed most. Because that's who Jun-ho is, underneath the overwhelming power. He never treated the people of the tower floors as disposable, the way other players did, as NPCs, as tools to farm for rewards. He treated them as real people. He made friends. He protected orphans. He cooked meals for his comrades and looked after those weaker than him. He was ruthless to fiends and monsters, but gentle with anyone who needed protecting. The strongest player in the world was, at his core, a man who fought so that other people wouldn't have to suffer the way he had. And as I climbed those floors, I began to peel back the real mystery buried underneath the entire system. Because none of it, the gates, the game, the floors, the Frost Queen, the resets, none of it was what it appeared to be on the surface. The tower had a purpose. Someone, or something, had turned the whole planet into this deadly game for a reason, and the answer was hidden higher up, floor by floor. There was a truth about why the world had become what it was, and about what was truly waiting for whoever reached the very top. Every floor I cleared brought me closer to two goals at the same time: waking my frozen friends, and finally understanding the secret behind the entire nightmare that had swallowed my life. And I didn't climb alone this time. Along the way I gathered new allies, young, talented players who begged me to train them, and who I ended up taking under my wing almost like family. Powerful figures who saw through my rookie disguise and chose to stand with me anyway. People of the tower floors who I refused to treat as expendable. Slowly, without quite meaning to, I built a new circle of people to fight beside, even as the old ones still slept in the ice, waiting for me to be strong enough to return. Piece by piece, floor by floor, the whole story builds toward the one moment I'd been fighting for since I stepped off that museum pedestal, gathering enough strength to shatter the frozen slumber and finally keep the promise I made 25 years ago on that battlefield. The promise that we would all see each other again. And that's the heart of what makes this story hit so hard. It looks like a simple strongest guy comes back and dominates power fantasy, and the domination is absolutely there. It's incredibly satisfying to watch a legend curb stomp arrogant modern players who don't know who he is. But underneath it is something warmer and sadder. It's about a man who gave up everything to save the world, only to wake up and find the world had left him behind, his friends still trapped, the job only 1/10 done. And instead of despairing, he quietly rolled up his sleeves, hid his legendary name, and started climbing all over again, not for glory, not for revenge, but to keep a promise to the people he loved. They put my frozen body in a museum and called me a hero who saved the world. But I hadn't saved anything yet. The real work started the day I thawed out. And a reset to level 1 was never going to stop the strongest player who ever lived from climbing back to the top, because this time, I wasn't climbing for the world. I was climbing for my friends. That's the story of Seo Jun-ho. Spectre. The frozen player who came back and started over